Alright. So we were investigating the tube, and our task was trying to figure out what the inside was, and we weren't sure what was on the inside. We knew that the ropes were all connected in some way, and I kind of figured that out right away because when the teacher was pulling on it, on the strings, it made it really clear that each one was connected to the others. So after our teacher demonstrated it, we started pulling on the ropes, and this drawing over here kind of demonstrates that if I pull on this one, all the other ones get pulled in. And so if I would pull on this one, all the other ones would get pulled in. So somehow all of them are connected, but we're not sure how. So our next step was we started coming up with some ideas. I've got 4 ideas up there. And that was kind of, we came up with those ideas as a class, and there were some other ideas. That's not all the ideas, but those are kind of the most interesting ideas. We needed to get more details. And so what we started doing is we started paying more attention to what we were doing with the tubes and with the ropes and how we were pulling them, really trying to get a feel, like pulling them slowly, pulling them fast, trying to figure out which strings are connected how and if there's any difference in the feel. What we noticed is that when we pulled the top 2 ropes, there was very little resistance. We could take the top 2 ropes back and forth really easily. Same thing with the bottom ones. But if I grabbed a top rope and a bottom rope, so I'll just show you what I mean by top and bottom. Like these 2 would be the top, these 2 would be the bottom. So when I pull these 2, there's not very much resistance. When I pull these 2, there's not much resistance. But if I grab any top and any bottom, either across or on top of each other, there's a lot more resistance. And so that kind of led us to believe, or we were thinking that must mean that those top 2 strings are the same, and there's some connection between a top rope and a bottom rope. So that led us to this first idea. And what this really means is that there's a looping. So the ropes are kind of across each other. They're wrapped around each other in a way. And so when you pull on this string, it would grab a hold of the bottom strings and pull itself up. Or pull all the strings up. So we had to put our idea to the test. First, we needed to confirm whether or not the top string was the same and the bottom string was the same. And so what we did is we pulled one side out as far as we could. We put a small piece of tape as close to the tube as we could. And when we pulled through on that same, what we thought was the same string, the tape did come out the other side. And then we tested that same idea on the bottom string. And so that confirmed for us, we still don't know for sure, but it would be an interesting trick that would be being played on us, that the top strings are the same and the bottom strings are the same. So this just kind of gives us a summary of the evidence so far. Here's the X, which represents the tape. When you pull through, the X comes out the other side. Same thing on the top. So we know the top strings are the same and the bottom strings are the same, but we're not sure how they're connected. So we got a couple of different ideas. And so we basically what we did is we went back to brainstorming some new ideas. We actually had some evidence for our first idea. The top string is the same and the bottom string is the same. But then talking with some of my classmates, I realized that that is actually a possibility as well. That there could be string wrapped around the other string, so there's like a loop of string here. And that would have a similar effect. About, I don't know, maybe we were 2 days in, we found some new evidence. And when somebody pushed all the strings in and held them in, and then they shook the tube, and we could hear a noise. It was a noise, it sounded like hard plastic hitting hard plastic. And really importantly is that this only happened when the ropes were pushed all the way in. So we figured that this thing, whatever it is, has to be on the ropes, and when we push the ropes in, it provides enough slack or enough extra rope that it can rattle against the sides. And so that kind of limited us to our ideas, which kind of goes, this is very similar to one of those that I showed you before, and this one is a little bit of a modification of the other one. And so we believe that there's some kind of ring holding the ropes together. And so that ring is made out of something hard that is making the sound. Now, because we believe the object making the rattling noise must have a purpose, we believe the second idea makes the most sense. Because if I go back to these 2 ideas, the ring really doesn't serve any purpose here other than to maybe hold the ropes closer together. But we don't think that makes sense. Here, the ring is actually involved in making the ropes work the way that they do. And so the evidence that this idea can explain is that it explains how the ropes move, it explains the rattling noise, and it explains that the tape would pass from one side to the other on the top and on the bottom. In order to test our idea further, we made a model. We made our own version of the tubes using our own materials, and we made the two ideas that we kind of had to narrow down to. And unfortunately, there was really no difference in how the two reacted. Each one could account for the evidence, but the reason we decided on this idea is because it allows us to say that the ring actually has a purpose. So unfortunately, we can't know for sure which one it is. We believe it's the second one, but the first one is still a viable option. So going forward, we'd like to, if we were to keep working on this, we'd like to identify the substance of the ring. And so we would do that by testing sounds. We could maybe do some mass things. There's lots of different options we would do, but what we'd like to figure out is what is that middle ring made out of. We would try knocking different things against the outside of the tube, see if we can compare sounds, things like that. And then ideally we'd like to develop a test of some sort to decide, that will help us decide between our last two options. Unfortunately, we don't have any ideas right now, but that's kind of where we'd like to go. Any questions? And I'm not actually going to take questions. Well, okay, I'll take questions. Sure, why not?
Is that how you do all your presentations?
Well, we'll talk about the presentations after I'm done. Okay, so now I want to do the other presentation.